Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash, and double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings to the house of David, which is the elect. And, I was just meditating on, the scripture here in First Timothy, the third chapter, in the sixth verse, Paul giving Timothy advice on, how to set up, church leaders. And, this advice still holds true. Okay. It is very relevant, true today. All right. Because, we have seen what happens when you have wrong leadership, a wrong person in leadership, right. Of a church, of a camp, and how it can be detrimental to that individual, and then unto the actual body of that church or camp, as well, because being a church leader, right, which in this chapter he calls it a bishop, which that's synonymous with a pastor or an elder, is a high responsibility. Okay, because we're not just being just leaders, right, of any old thing, right. We're being the heads of the bodies, or should I say the heads of the church of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. All right, and with that responsibility or position comes great responsibility, and a high standard that the Lord holds you to. And this is why, as we've seen men, right, namely guys like Gorilla Hebrew, although he's been in, well, can't even say that he's in the truth, but although he's known the truth for a while and been in a position of a leader for a while, he started off as a leader, as a novice. Okay. And that ultimately was, really his downfall. All right. The fact that he started, and put and thrust himself into a leadership position at such a young age in the truth, right? And that means, right, his spiritual maturity, right, the spiritual intelligence wasn't there, right? It wasn't at a high level. Eventually, as we seen, that was going to be his downfall. Okay, and a lot of people overlook the importance of growing spiritually, right, and spiritual maturity before you try to, or before you get to a position where you have men that are underneath you. Okay, because as Peter said, that we are supposed to be examples unto the flock, right? Examples unto the men, first and foremost, that are part of the church. And then also, as we go out and feed the sheep, we got to be examples unto them as well. And a lot of individuals, they take the position of a leader as one to be somebody that you are ruling, right? And that's something that I always keep in mind, right? That as a leader, your job isn't to tell people what to do, right? Your job is to show people what to do. Show the church, or the flock, or the men under you, how to be. Okay, and that is the characteristics of a good leader. All right, because that's what Yahweh Shai did, right? Yahweh Shai, when he came to show, right, his disciples the way, right? Not tell them, okay, you do this, you do that, you do that. No, he showed them how to do it. That's why he said in the book of Luke, that what the Son of Man came to serve, even though he was the Lord, right? Even though he had the authority to tell individuals what to do. That's not what he came. That's not how he presented himself, because the true makings of a true leader isn't one that rules over people, with that mindset of being a boss, but more so of being a example, All right. So here in the book of First Timothy, the third chapter, verse, I'm gonna start at 1 and I'm gonna jump to 6. It says, "This is a true saying: if a man desire the office of a bishop," right, and that word bishop is like an overseer, right, or an elder, right, he desireth a good work. Okay, and that's and that's the thing is also right because you wanting to be a leader, it really depends on your mindset about it. Okay, because you can say, right, oh, you desire to be a leader, but why? Right, is it because you want just the position, because you want to be ahead of everybody, you want to be the top guy, or is it because you want to sincerely serve? Because that's what the position is about. It's about serving, right? And a lot of people get that misconstrued and get it confused because they still haven't really put off that old man. And that's why the scripture speaks about verse 6, right? Not a novice, right? So he says that he mentions things that that man, right, that wants to be, a church leader, the characteristics that he should have, but then he says the characteristics that he shouldn't have, right? And one of them is not being a novice. And what is a novice? A novice is a new convert, right, or a neophyte in the Greek, right? Newly planted. See, one who has recently become a believer. And that's a very important aspect of it, because somebody that is has recently came into the truth, you have a lot of growing to do, right? That is why the scripture speaks about desiring the sincere milk, right? Let me see if I can pull that up. Yep, First Peter chapter 2 verse 3. It says, "As newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby." Okay, so that is the main aspect that when you first come into the truth, you're supposed to do. All right, it's to desire the milk of the scriptures. Your mind shouldn't be on, oh, I want to be a camp leader. Okay, you don't even understand, right, scriptures. How much more? Because it's more than just going out there on the highways and byways and quoting scriptures, right? It's more than just calling the white man, the so-called white man, the devil, right? Or telling Jake that they 2/3 and they going off. Like, yeah, that's part of it, but when it comes to being a leader, it's a lot more on the back end that most people realize. And when you have guys that thrust themselves, or push them, try to make themselves into that position, if it's not ordained by the Lord, you're not gonna stay in that position, right? And we see countless examples of that in the scriptures, where if the Lord didn't ordain an individual, right, to be put in a position, then eventually he was going to be put out of that position. And the Lord was going to have the one that he wants to be put in that position to be put in that position. You see? But even with that, those individuals that the Lord put in that position, they grew to be put in that position, right? Because, for instance, King David, when King David was anointed king, he didn't become king right away, right? Matter of fact, he he became a student, understudy, right, to King Saul. Now, we knew that King Saul wasn't the guy, at that point, that King Saul wasn't the guy that the Lord was going to establish as king, but yet the Lord didn't immediately remove King Saul as king and then put King David, there. He had King David grow, right, in wisdom. He grew in character. He grew in knowledge, right? In all those things, he grew in experience, and all of those things helped him be the leader that he became, right? But if you take on that position as a church leader, right? A bishop, as it says in First Timothy, and you didn't have any of those experiences that are necessary to be in that position, what is going to happen? You're going to end up, damaging the church and also damaging yourself, as it says in First Timothy. Let's go back there. First Timothy 3 verse 6. It says, "Not a novice, least being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil." See, and in a different translation, it says, where is that? The NLT. It says a church leader must not be a new believer because he might become proud, right? Might become proud. And we have seen that example, right? that like I said, Guerrilla Hebrew is a prime example of that. You become proud because you get in this position where people are looking up to you, right? People are honoring you as being, and remember the skills of being able to break down scriptures and get precept upon precept and do these things, that doesn't necessarily translate into you being a leader of a church. Okay, you can have somebody that is in a church that is better than a leader when it comes to breaking down scriptures. But the point of being that in that position is, like I said, it's more than just you being able to break down scriptures. It's about how you are able to lead, right? By example, the flock. And that is something that comes with experience, and it comes with a certain mindset of maturity and wisdom. So that is why it says that a novice shouldn't be that, because they wouldn't have that, they would have gained that experience yet. See? And this is why a lot of men, like I said, for new believers, the best thing for you to do is try to get, with a church, if it's possible, if you're close by, to try to learn and grow, by watching, how things and conducts, are amongst the church, right? As the scripture says here in the book of Sirach, Sirach chapter 22, no, not 22, Sirach chapter 8, verse 9, it says, "Despise not the discourse of the wise, but acquaint thyself with their proverbs." See, so you're supposed to be amongst the discourse of the wise. It says, "For of them thou shalt learn instruction, and how to serve great men with ease." Verse 9 is the point. "Miss not the discourse of the elders." Salakia. It says, "Miss not the discourse of the elders, for they also learn of their fathers, and of them thou shalt learn understanding, and to give answer as need requireth." Okay, so it's important to be around individuals that have been in the truth, longer than you, so that you can learn from them. And it's not just learning scripture. Was obviously that's the main thing, but you learn how to be a man of the Lord, right? You learn how to exhibit those virtues that accelerates you spiritually, accelerates your walk in this truth, and how to maneuver in this world. All right, and a lot of individuals, they look past those things, and really, when you get that experience, that's what you're showing as an example, unto the flock. But a man that is a hireling, he's not going to care about that. He's not going to care about the actual character development of the men that he is, presiding over. You see, and then with that being said, they now start to pick up the habits and traits of this novice leader, right? Because this novice leader didn't even take the time to purge himself of the old man, right? And I remember when Alazar came out with that whole, video where he was crying, and he had made mention like, oh, he still had demons that he never really exercised off of him from the world, and that was because he never gave himself the opportunity to grow. Right? He thrust himself into a leadership position instead of, you know, humbling himself and waiting for the Lord to um, um, was to exalt you, as Peter said, right? Humble thyself before the mighty hand of the Lord, and in due time he will exalt you. But instead, you trying to exalt yourself, you want to end up like what? You want to end up like that parable who the Lord said to that guy that sat in the high seat, right, in the upper room, to sit down because there's somebody more honorable that the seat is made for. All right, so it's very important to understand that with that position, it requires character, right? And character only comes by way of, as it says here in Romans 5 verse 3, um, Romans 5 Romans chapter 5 verse 3, it says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulation also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, which that word patience is perseverance, and perseverance or patience experience, and that word experience is character. Okay, tried and proven character. Okay, and the character is what makes a church leader, right? A good church leader, if he has a good character, traits. But a lot of individuals are not thinking about those things that try to be put in that position, and eventually, like I said, because this is the Lord's business, the Lord is going to weed out that type of person that ain't supposed to be there. That's something that I have seen personally from my own experience, time and time again, that who the Lord wants to be in that position will be in that position. And it will be shown that that is the person that should be put in that position due to how the flow of, the church will be. All right. So, with that, I'm going to end it there. I just want to touch on that, Lord willing. This was edifying unto the elect, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Rakakwadash. Shalom.